There were readings with all sorts of people. Confused people, happy people, curious people. There was a woman involved in a difficult marriage who continually pressed me to say whether or not her chart revealed a divorce. Rather than answer such a delicate question with a yes or a no, I did my best to give an honest and balanced interpretation of the blueprint, along with the clearest discourse on free will and predestiny I could muster. Whether or not I, as an astrologer, am of the opinion that a couple would succeed or fail in their union, the last effect I would wish to produce is for a person to give up their choice in the matter over to the birth chart. A birth chart they themselves have little ability to interpret. But the more the woman pushed for an answer, the more I considered that perhaps giving her something of a definitive opinion was in order. Her marriage difficulties were affecting both her health and her happiness in a terrible way. She was essentially being victimized by her husband, who, it seemed, had no intention of letting up. And she in turn appeared to lack the will to take any kind of effective action. So I finally told her that whatever happened was really and truly up to her, but that if I had to bet on the outcome based on her chart, I would place my money on separation. The separation would occur in the very near future, most likely in the next 2 or 3 months. I also qualified my statements, as I always do in the case of such important matters, by saying that astrology, for better or worse, is not one bit more absolute than anything else in the field of relative existence. At any rate, I have never observed astrologers to be more than perhaps 70 or 80% accurate in their interpretive ability. I gave her my opinion. And as hard as it was to be relatively definitive, and for all the compassion the act required, for I personally believed the woman should have run, not walked, to the nearest divorce lawyer, there was in the end resentment as my reward. This woman, more than a year later, bumped into a friend of mine to complain that James Braha said my husband and I would divorce, and we never did. He shouldn't have said that. At first I was only slightly bothered by the matter and chalked the whole thing up to human beingness. But the same exact occurrence between the woman and my friend happened more than once. Each time it brought me a greater sense of agitation. After all of my care and concern to employ the language of the heavens sensitively and with moderation, common sense, and tact, I had obviously blown it. I had misjudged the woman's ability to hear what I was saying, not to mention that my prediction itself was wrong. Although decent astrologers never consider themselves infallible, each time my friend encountered this woman who related her story, my frailty would painfully surface. After the 4th meeting, however, there was a different tune being sung. It seems the birth time she had provided was 12 hours off. She had, in fact, been born in the AM, not the PM, as previously thought. Now she conveyed her intention to have her chart done again. Well, not by this astrologer, I thought. Not this time. I, for the most part, enjoyed the astrological counseling process. It was extremely exciting to be involved so deeply in people's most intimate concerns so immediately, indeed in the space of only a few hours. It was exciting to see whether and how intensely people's birth charts matched their stories, and when they did not, to try to determine why. As an astrologer, this discernment process, difficult and frustrating as it is what separates the great from the average, the truly intelligent from the mere intellectual, and the humble from the arrogant. Most of all, it was exciting to be able to use astrology and all I had learned throughout my spiritual years to alter people's thinking, to correct the mistake of the intellect wherever I was clear enough to perceive it. All of this was also at times painfully frustrating. I never ceased to be amazed at how difficult some individuals' lives could be. Having come to my maturity in the 1970s and been so involved in the self-development or me generation, it was hard to conceive of the extent of the lack of fulfillment people were willing to tolerate in their lives. I remember one woman whose story was so incredible she wanted someday to put it into writing. She explained how, years earlier, her husband had worked for the CIA and had left town just before President Kennedy's assassination, never to return. She said he called from Washington to say he would be a few days late, and that was the last she had heard of him. There was a good deal more detail involved, of course, but the point is that here we sat 20-odd years later, and this woman, unbelievably, was still waiting for her husband to return, still suffering, and had not been with another man the whole time. I directed this woman to a particular New Age movement where she could participate in the most Be Here Now seminar I knew. Occasionally, I would receive thank you letters from clients after sessions they considered to be especially valuable or significant. This was something I genuinely appreciated, since I was well aware that my sessions were often somewhat intense and confronting. For all of my love of astrology, I had not chosen it as a profession for excitement or fun or money. There was and is a commitment to make a difference in people's lives, a real and lasting difference. To do this, or even come close to doing this, in one meeting, it generally requires great and concentrated rigor. Despite our expressed desires to grow, improve, and evolve, we can be extraordinarily lazy when it comes to taking responsibility for our lives and initiating appropriate action. Hence, a good many of my readings with clients have not been the essence of comfort, especially from their point of view. And so their appreciation was especially rewarding.